Ready? Go!
Speedrunning is pretty niche. It's uncommon for a game to have over 100 submitted runs in its entire lifetime. Sure, people spend thousands of hours in these games, pushing them far beyond any limits the developers could have foreseen. But in the grand scheme, it's only a few that end up doing so. This is a problem that speedrunners have been trying to remedy for a long time. And in a big way, it's worked. Through content creation, showcase events like Games Done Quick, and speedrunning tournaments, the speedrunning community has grown immensely over the last decade. I, of course, have been doing the best I can to do my part and spread the good word about everyone's favorite degenerate act, speedrunning. And in my case, more specifically, speedrunning Devil May Cry. And sometimes Left 4 Dead, and sometimes Doom, and you get the point. My latest endeavor to get more people involved in killing demons quickly is a 10-week-long individual level event I called the Demon Prix. Each week across 10 weeks, I would announce a randomly selected mission from the first 3 Devil May Cry games, and anyone who wanted to participate would have one whole week to get the best time they possibly could on just that mission. The best time of the week would receive 100 points, and then every other time would receive less based on how far away they were from the first place. Every week would have a tutorial for how to speedrun that level and a save file to download and play off of. This allowed for a nice, even playing ground for everyone who wanted to participate. The goal here was simple. Participate every week, getting a taste of the first 3 Devil May Cry games speedruns. Getting the best time you can, the top 3 scores across all 10 weeks will receive a split of a prize pool that I put up myself. I really just wanted to break down the barrier to entry as low as humanly possible. With every level coming with a tutorial and the longest level being about 4 minutes long, even people who have never speedrun before should be able to join and have a good time. The turnout was much better than I could have ever expected, with the first week having over 50 unique participants, the vast majority of which had never speedrun any game before this. Of these many contenders though, one stood out from the rest, and quickly solidified himself as a legend amongst even the veteran Devil May Cry speedrunners. This is the story of how Chris completely destroyed my Devil May Cry speedrunning tournament. It all started on week 1. Week 1 brings us to the bright and sunny Malay Island, known for its wild cats and its lava spiders. The first Devil May Cry game's 4th level was to be our first battleground. I provided the week's contestants with an example run like I would every week. These examples will be based off of the world record route for the full game speedrun. So I'm basically giving people a foundation to work from, then allowing them to do whatever they want after that. You do have to start from the same save file though, which means whatever loadout is currently equipped is going to have to stay. The best time on the in-game timer at the end of the level is the winner. The example run shows off a classic strategy of running away from the spider as fast as possible. I fucking hate those things. Then you confront a neighborhood cat that needs to be taught a lesson. After he explodes like my pants on a first date, we do some marionette parkour, the sickest piece of platforming in the entire game. We then collect a sword that we use to remove this ball gag from this statue. After that, we simply give Nello Angelo a bath and weaken him to confirm that we skip both additional phases. This example run gets a 1:18 in game time. It starts with the shotgun equipped. For the first few days, people were mostly just trying to learn the basic strategies, as the vast majority of people participating hadn't ever speedrun the game before. A whole host of people who would quickly join in, getting low 120s and eventually matching my example time. After another day or so, people would start surpassing me, getting even better times than my example. This was mostly due just to having cleaner movement throughout the level. During this time, there was a villain in their midst, an evildoer, plotting, brewing a strategy so cancerous that it would drive the other contestants mad. Loner Hero, the DMC2 speedrunning legend, had in the distant past discovered a forbidden jutsu deep within the scrolls of DMC1's library. If you manage to get the shadow to dodge a certain way while he's near the wall, he can randomly fall out of the map, instantly killing him. Not only does this make the combat way faster, it can also skip the death animation that's rather long. This was estimated to save roughly 10 seconds, and for an individual level, that is an immense amount of time. The problem was the strategy was only thought to be viable using ebony and ivory, and this save file had the shotgun equipped. On top of that, it was exceedingly difficult and random. So much so that no one thought it'd be worth doing even for an individual level speedrun. That is, until now. He would be the first to attempt it in his runs, and he quickly got to the top spot doing so.
I told you. Oh, I feel like it's a triangle. Oh.
But once he had done it, the floodgates were open. Then everyone and their mother, regardless of how new they were to speedrunning or DMC1, were trying it. And it was chaos. Hundreds of runs in just a matter of hours were destroyed in the pursuit of this insane goal. Soon, a 110 was achieved, then a 109. It quickly devolved until Chris, the hero of our story, would get a 105. Surely, this would be the last time. Surely, there would be no way it could go any lower. In this time, another new discovery was made. By using Devil Trigger and Million Stabbing the Cat, as it attacked you, you could instantly lower its shields. This was several seconds faster than the previous skewer strategy, and thus allowed a time as low as 113. Half-Life and Quake Speedrunning God Movie would achieve this time, pioneering a new strategy that was actually full game viable. For those who wanted an even greater time, there was always going to be the despawn mode, the final frontier. Many would end up finally achieving it by the end of the week. Despite the trick being complete hell, a staggering 15 people managed to pull it off in a run. JRC, Dongio, who was playing on keyboard only, Zerx, Ish, Yang, Setyan, Loner Hero, Bunky, Moody, Spence, Fiery, Spartan, Tata, and Chris. Many were able to achieve it in the end, but the top times came down to what they always come down to: movement.
This is my strat after all. Geronimo. But
Chris was able to get a final time of 104, a seemingly unbeatable time. And nearing the end of the week, it seemed like that was going to be the best time for that week. But then, just a few moments before the time of the week closed, Chris came in with this, a 103. And it was nearly a flawless run. Starting the mission, he stingered away from Phantom with 3 perfect stingers. Then he could activate Devil Trigger to run through the door more quickly. With 2 more stingers, he then activates the statue spawning in the shadow, who he then promptly kicks off the map with the shotgun. Once he's gone, he then heads inside to do the puppet jump. From here, he has some super tight movement, jumping really early to get the wall jump up to the sword. While the despawn is crazy impressive, the actual most impressive thing about this run was the movement in this elevator shaft. From here, he gave Nella Angela a bath and beat the level in 1 minute and 3 seconds, starting the first week off strong, obliterating the previous world record by nearly 12 seconds. Week 2, the skies would darken. No longer on the sunny shores of Malay Island, we venture into the unknown, the foreign, the terrifying. Devil May Cry 2, Mission 13. Inside the concrete jungle of DMC2's cityscape is Mission 13, that consists entirely of the first Arius boss fight. My example for this week set the record for the fastest mission in DMC speedrunning, being only 12 seconds long. But it wouldn't be long until it was much, much faster. I chose this mission because I wanted to make DMC2 as accessible as possible for this event. That's the name of the game, I suppose, in general for this event. Accessibility. Getting people into the speedrun of these games. And while speedrunning any game can be an intimidating experience, it's a lot scarier when you don't know anything about the game you're attempting to run. With DMC2 being so infamous, people don't know much about the mechanics it has to offer. So starting off with a basic level that's so short seemed like the perfect way to get people to try something that they might otherwise be opposed to. And it worked. This week saw nearly as many runners as week 1, despite it being DMC2. My example mission had 2 actual strategies. The first was just spamming Stinger and praying that the boss doesn't fight back. Doing so can easily get you a 12-second time with enough attempts, but I wanted to incentivize a little bit more development within my players. So I added a stipulation to the rules for this week. You had to get an A rank or you automatically add 2 seconds to your time. 2 seconds doesn't seem like a lot, but when the average completion is 12 seconds long, that's a huge debuff. And with the way the points scaled, it would hurt you significantly. This was all to incentivize people to learn the more advanced strategy. By alternating your moves in this specific way, you could stun lock the boss, making it impossible for him to hit you. This alone should guarantee the S rank. It's not any faster than the Stinger strategy, but it was far more consistent at giving the A rank. And off they went. The Heihachi lookalike Ari has probably died more times in this week than he ever has in the history of DMC2 combined. With resets only taking 12 seconds long, people could really grind out the fight. Very quickly, many people arrived at a 12-second time. Then Super Spider was able to get an 11-second time without using a different strategy. I'm not sure how, but they must have really gotten good damage and managed to squeeze out just enough time to make the next second. Surely it couldn't get much more optimized than this though. Or so I thought. But if you've been around speedrunning as long as I have, then you would know that anytime you say that, it just beckons the runners to go even further beyond. It was quickly discovered that it was possible to use round trip while flying to do even more damage, and that if you got lucky, you could stun lock the boss in a way where he didn't get to move, and this ends the fight much faster. At first, it seemed like a 10-second time was as far as that was going to go, but then, with better and better luck, it was ground all the way down to 7 seconds. With the run being so short and with so many people grinding, by the time the week was over, we had a 15-way tie for first place. It was Zerx, Tata, Zvud, Super Spider, Stubby, Spence, Spartan Phoenix, Moody, Monkey, Loner Hero, Light, Fiery, Chris, Asthenia, and JRC, all achieving a 7-second time. Week 3 had finally arrived, and with both DMC1 and DMC2 getting their time to shine, you could guess which game it was next. For our first foray into DMC3, we visit Dante's babysitter Lady on Mission 16. My example run was a 2:47, and this was a pretty damn good run for a full game run. But as we would soon discover, the more mechanically intense a game is, the further it can be optimized, as every little thing compounds to squeeze seconds out of every interaction. We first head into the puzzle and slam our balls together, because that's actually more fun than fighting the Fallen. Despite this, we still have to fight the Fallen. Thankfully, here we dump a holy water. Then we use some smooth movement to head over to the next required combat, where we kill one blood goyle and then use the holy water to clear the rest of the enemies. Next we break one more ball and then do a chess pieces fight, and finally head over to Lady, who we kill with a nice clean 3 cycle, skipping her phase where she jumps onto the rafters. I immediately knew that some fuckery was going to be afoot, as I was well aware of a strategy that would be perfect for individual level runs. Instead of using your release on the Lady boss fight like you normally do, you would instead gold release the rocket launcher and kill the boss in one quick cycle. This strategy is insanely hard though, as a gold release in this game is a 3-frame trick at 60 FPS, meaning you only have 1/20th of a second window to counter it. On top of that, you have to also make sure that she doesn't get away by continuing the combo right afterwards. If you miss the release, you would lose your chance to do this massive damage, and this almost certainly costs you the phase skip, which for any full game run would be pretty much GG. Thankfully, this run is only 3 minutes long, so we can beat our heads into the wall all we want with little punishment. Before anyone would do that though, there was plenty of time to be saved in the other rooms. It was discovered that there was a slightly more optimal way to activate the dials in this level. Using Devil Trigger made for faster dials in the first room, and by getting to the exit of the Fallen room early enough, you could guard the door as it tried to attack you. This built up Rage Meter. You would then use this Rage Meter on the dial in the chest room to summon the ball earlier. The hallway before the Blood Goyle fight had a super tight enemy surfing line that you could do to instantly get into the door, saving a few seconds. This one would turn out to be super hard, and some runners would just opt to not even bother with it though. In the chest room, a strategy was developed to use the Devil Trigger explosion in a different way, for the second wave of spawns. Instead of using it on the knight and the rook on the far side, they would instead attack the close rook but near the knight and hope that they got enough luck so that the last rook would rush over to them, allowing them to Devil Trigger explode and hit all 3 at the same time instead of just 2. This saved several seconds but made it harder to build the royal guard meter needed for the Lady boss fight. Then came a sleeper hard part of the run. The movement on the way to Lady was exceedingly difficult to do well, with many runners falling in this pit of doom, losing nearly 30 seconds. On a level this short, that's an instant reset. Before people went too crazy with rocket releases, they attempted to find a faster alternative strategy that wasn't so all or nothing. Loner Hero was able to find a way to bring the fight down to a 2 cycle instead of a 3 cycle by abusing Lady's counter. Instead of avoiding the health threshold entirely for phase 2, they made her skip it by using it straight to send her flying and then shooting her, This causes her to counter the bullets with her own and sets her up for a quicker kill because she doesn't run away. Many souls were lost in this exchange. Lady is a cruel mistress. But near the end of the week, there were 3 main frontrunners. Stubby, the current DMC3 world record holder, for now, watch yourself Stub, Chris, and Asthenia. Asthenia, a prominent DMC3 speedrunner and style player, would actually find a better one cycle for Lady, making it perfect with no downtime. After implementing this new strategy, these 3 players were all deadlocked, tied at a 2:19. A massive 28-second gap from them to my example run. But just before the week would end, Chris would rise from the ashes and pull out a 2:15. At this point, Chris had not only gotten first place in all 3 weeks, but he beat out DMC3 runners at their own game. Chris had not really touched DMC2 or 3 speedrunning up to this point, but for the event, he dipped his toes. Stubby and Asthenia were both really close, but with Stubby taking a hit in the chest room and slightly worse movement from both of them, Chris was able to just edge out a few more seconds. After staff cleaned up the bloodbath that was week 3, we were able to start off on week 4. This week, we were fully embracing the lunacy of speedrunning by doing ILs of the first mission in DMC1. The first level in any speedrun is bound to drive you crazy, but DMC1's first mission in particular is maddening. That's because it's nearly 2.5 minutes long, and the first minute and 30 seconds of that is pure movement. This can be a bit mind-numbing, but trust me, once you get to the combat, you're going to be wishing that the level was all movement. With 2 fights consisting entirely of marionettes with random health ranges and having absolutely no upgrades, not even Devil Trigger, this section is notorious for resets. And in an individual level run, that random HP is going to be a much bigger factor than ever before. I figured there was bound to be some blasting, and blasting there sure was. With DMC1's guns being so damn strong, our poor runners this week would have calluses on their thumbs from how much they were mashing the shoot button. Insert DMC2 joke here. My example run was only a 2:29, but many of our runners quickly matched the world record for the level, at a 2:19. This became the new stopping point. Anything below this will require an insane amount of luck on top of practically perfect movement. This is when Chris would decide to flex for real. Always having had a specialization in DMC1 ILs, Chris was in his element. That was basically all he had done before this event had started, so he was more familiar with this game than anyone here. Chris has spent thousands of hours mastering the movement in every nook and cranny of this game. Never had he applied it in such a way before, but it was only a matter of time. Even for him though, this was an insane grind. Hours would quickly pass, then days. Every time he got to the combat with perfect movement, he would have to watch as his time slunk down the drain as he got bad luck. But eventually, his hard-headedness would pay off. He improved arguably the most optimized world record in the entirety of Devil May Cry speedrunning by a whopping 3 seconds. And once again, had the perfect score for the event. Arriving at the halfway point of the event, week 5 brought us to the gloomy streets of DMC2 once again. But this time, something was different. This time, Dante was gonna go apeshit. Mission 3 consists entirely of one combat encounter with a goat, and a boss fight with a Regulera. My example run here I thought was quite good, achieving a 49-second time, setting up the secret Majin Devil Trigger and blasting the monkey with a laser beam to instantly end the fight. Apparently though, there was a lot more to be optimized here. It turns out there was a second or so to be saved on slightly better movement on the way to the goat lane, and then a few runners would do a completely new setup to get Majin Devil Trigger. If you don't know, if your health drops below 10% of your maximum HP, you can activate Majin Devil Trigger. This makes you invincible for a duration and also does insane damage. So in order to kill the boss fast, runners would get hit by both the door and the goat lane on purpose to farm health loss and Devil Trigger. Then use Majin to eviscerate the boss. The way I had done it in my example was to get close to Majin as the goatling dies and enter the boss room, and have the door in there hit me into Majin. This is fast, but it's faster to get Majin before entering the room and then instantly activate. I did know this, but it's random how much damage you take in the first room, and I didn't get a good roll. What I didn't know, however, is that you can activate Majin as the door is opening, so the animation plays out while you can't move. This essentially skips the activation animation, saving a few seconds. Getting a setup for this though is quite rare, so our runners had some farming to do. It would later be discovered that not only is health range random, but the Goatling's death animation is also random, and takes a variable amount of time. In order to get the best possible time, you would need both to get good hits from the Goatling and a good death animation while executing the Majin quick kill. This would turn out to be much harder than expected. A few were on the hunt though. Chris, of course, did his best, but the expected winner here was Loner Hero, the long-standing DMC2 world record holder. Surely no one could beat him at his own game, at least when the level is longer than 7 seconds long. This was his time to shine. Tata, Loner Hero, and Chris would all arrive at a 43-second time after much grinding. This is when Loner Hero and Tata would call it quits for the week. But Chris was not satisfied. He knew that there was more time to be saved. So, he kept grinding. He grinded and grinded until there was no more monkeys in any zoos across the entirety of the United States. Harambe was no longer alone. His reward would be worth it though, as not only would he jump into the front of the pack once again, but with a 41, a whole 2-second lead on both Loner and Tata. His major time save would be slightly better movement, facing the door as Majin activated, allowing him to enter the boss arena slightly earlier. It was already hard enough to simply get the RNG you wanted, but to also combine that with near perfect movement was just too much for Loner and Tata. It simply wasn't worth the grind. Chris now had a total of 500 points, perfecting the first half of the tournament all by himself. The grungy DMC2 experience would only be enhanced in week 6, jumping to mission 12. My example run was a brief 43-second time, tackling the most disorienting room in gaming with a few helm breakers and then bullying Plutonia, the mission's boss. Over the week, the vast majority of runners were able to compete with my time, a few even beating it. But the way that this mission was speedrun would change overnight. Chris had discovered a new strategy that brought the time of this mission all the way down to 29 seconds, and no one could touch him because of this. This was easily the most technical strategy of the event so far. He used the Devil Star early, instead of before the boss, and then he was able to do a technique called a kick cancel, to float around and break the pyramids all in one juggle. This required holding the shoot button in the air and attacking rhythmically, all while switching targets repeatedly to lock onto the right enemy. This saved a massive amount of time, and with the level already so short, he created a giant gap between himself and the rest of the runners. The only other runner who was able to hit the strategy perfectly was Tata, who was only a few seconds behind. Zerx was damn close as well. Week 7 would bring us back to our roots, sitting outside of a castle cooking some fried chicken. DMC 1, Mission 9 has the Griffin boss fight and the Ifrit gloves. Combining those two together, we get a KFC speedrun. My example run would bring us through this level in 2 minutes and 6 seconds. The run was mostly movement, vortexing across open fields and doing a bit of platforming to skip right to Ifrit. Unfortunately, we don't actually fight the Featherface, as we just use Ifrit to open the door early. This is when things would get crazy though. This forest has 10 spawns and they always spawn the same enemies and in the same order every time. But where they spawn changes, so killing all of these enemies quickly requires a lot of adaptation and good devil trigger management. Then once that's clear, just a tad more movement and it's GG. 206 was a solid baseline, as it wouldn't get much faster than that. Over the course of the week, many would beat that time. Chris, Stubby, Tata, Spence, Uns, Born Villain, Takatibi, Moater, and Destiny Spider would all do so. The top 2 would be a big jump from the rest, doing a strategy that Chris developed to skip the last 2 spawns in the forest fight. By killing the last fetish right as he lands, you can skip the last 2 enemies from spawning in and instantly end the fight. This saved a massive amount of time, but required the fetish to drop in the right spot and had some very tight execution. Shooting the marionette in the air before it lands actually drops it to 1 HP, because it can't die in the air before it touches the ground. This sets him up perfectly to instantly kill him and then be right towards the door. Aside from this, it was mostly just better movement overall, vortex lines being tighter and better DT management. This was used to bring the time all the way down to a 151. Stubby was right behind with a 154. Thus marked the 7th week with Chris on top, and with only 3 weeks left, there wasn't much hope of anyone else making it to the number 1 spot. If Chris played poorly in the last 3 weeks, it was possible though. Tata and Spence were the closest ones, dropping only a dozen points or so to Chris. Week 8 would be the start of their chances, as it's once again back to DMC3. Tata, having previously run a lot of DMC3 and having a sub 1 hour time, gave him a big advantage over Chris. But it was yet to be seen if that would be enough to claw back this gap. Mission 10 was yet another really straightforward mission. I tried to make the missions as approachable as possible so that I wouldn't scare away any new players, but that wouldn't keep the runners from optimizing it into the ground. And ironically, the easier levels get more optimized faster, thus making something that looks approachable actually much more difficult than it appears. Mission 10 is basically just a few movement rooms for the first few sections, free riding through the halls and out of the waterfall. A few rooms later, we arrive at the Doulahans where we build royal guard on the blades on the wall. Then a few more rooms later, we gold release some spiders and dump a holy water on what's left. This was the only week where there were no new strategies developed during the entire week. Only minor optimizations were made about movement, devil trigger management, and damage. This time, Stubby managed to tie Chris, with Tata and Spence not far behind. Normally, when Chris was tied, he would spend a day or two afterwards trying to untie it. But with how much of a home field advantage Stubby had on Chris, they decided that they would just call it a truce, tired from the previous week's runs. They were able to bring it all the way down to a 137. This would be the only time Chris was tied by anyone in any week outside of the 15-way tie on week 2. Week 9 finally rolled around, and yet again it was DMC 3. This would be the last chance for people to catch up to Chris, as it had been made apparent that no one could match him at either DMC 1 or DMC 2. This would be the final stage for the final boss, Chris being the final boss. Speaking of, week 9 is DMC 3, mission 20. The Virgil boss fight and the last mission in DMC 3, this level is notoriously hard. It requires an intimate understanding of pretty much all of DMC 3's more complicated mechanics. If there was ever a time to surpass Chris, it would be now. But he only saw this as an opportunity to push himself even further beyond. My example run was pretty much a flawless example of the standard speedrun strat at 24 seconds. Basically, you just block Virgil's attack and jump cancel him with a devil trigger explosion on top to quickly end the fight, skipping his final phase. If you wanted a better time at all, you'd have to do something a little crazy. The world record for this level was a 19-second time, and it relied a bit on luck. The top players nearly instantly matched my time and quickly began searching for something better. This poking and prodding at the game's mechanics unearthed a forbidden jutsu. They called it DT Flux. When doing a devil trigger explosion, if a release was timed perfectly, the DT explosion would cause the release to hit twice, doing double damage. This was massive and allowed 6 people to beat the previous world record: Stubby, Tata, Spence, Dongio, Zerx, and of course, Chris. The fastest times came down to 17 seconds. Only Stubby and Chris would get faster than that. Stubby literally just stingered to the boss, and that was the difference. But Chris would, well, and at this point you should already know, Chris got this. He did this by doing an even more forbidden technique, one that us DMC3 speedrunners like to pretend doesn't exist, because the implications for it could mean the end of the speedrun as we know it. It's called a release cancel. By jump canceling at the perfect time and distance from an enemy, you can cancel the release in a way that causes it to do damage, but not use the charged rage meter, allowing you to use it more than once. This is cursed, because this is insanely precise. It's not only frame perfect, but also position perfect. You have to be standing the perfect distance away and hit a frame perfect jump cancel. He was able to do this and hit the DT Flux right after, instantly eviscerating Virgil. With all that being said and done, Chris has secured his 900 points with a pretty big lead on second. All that was left for him was to take it home and pitch the perfect game. Week 10 would be back to his roots, DMC 1, Mission 11. My example blasts through the mission in just over a minute, getting a 112. This mission is all about movement, and as we know at this point, that is Chris's specialty. He instantly got the best time of the week, posting a 104 on the first day of the week. And it was beautiful. Throughout the rest of the week, no one really got close to Chris's time, making him get a perfect score on all 10 weeks with 1,000 points. Tata got second place with 939 points, Spence with third place with 904, and JRC in fourth with an 841. Stubby would follow just behind in fifth with an 831. Overall, the event was a huge success, and I'm super happy with it. We had over 60 unique submitters, many of which had never speedrun a game before in their lives, and a couple of them even picked up full game runs after the event. Chris absolutely destroyed this event with his perfect score, and while he wasn't new from the event itself, he hadn't ever done a run of DMC2 or DMC3, and on top of that, he had never really done full game runs of DMC1 either. While this event was set up primarily to get new runners into the series, and it did, of course, it also had a secondary goal of keeping previously existing runners interested and giving them a reason to reinvest time into other levels that they may have thought they tapped out. Over the course of the event, all 10 missions that were ran had their world records improved by a wide margin, and had strategies developed that had never been seen before. Some of these strategies even made their way into full game speedruns and are now part of the meta. Not only did Chris get a perfect score, but he also pioneered a lot of these strategies with the help of the other runners in the Discord. While I love seeing this chase of excellence, my favorite part of the event was seeing how active the community got and how much we were able to keep this momentum going into the relay race. You can find a video for that relay race here. I had a ton of fun with this event, and I think that the format is great, it just needs a little bit of tweaking. I think that next time we'll make it a little bit shorter, and we'll do it with DMC 4, 5, and Reboot. I'm hoping to do 2 of these a year, one for 1, 2, and 3, and one for 4, 5, and Reboot. Thank you so much for watching, and stay stylish.